Welcome back to Unboxing Logistics. I'm your host, Lori Boyer, and I am selfishly excited for today's topic because we have a super exciting take on last mile. And you might think, oh, I know everything about last mile, but we are actually going to be talking about how last mile is impacted before you even get there. So I say selfishly because I'm a mom. I have 7 kids, which feels like 7 billion, and I get a lot of packages. I have invited on the one and only Nicholas Daniel Richards from the amazing location of Queens, New York. He is going to walk us through a little bit of last mile. Nicholas, why don't you introduce yourself?
That is quite an introduction. I've now been warned how many packages you expect, so I'd better make sure everybody using our software is getting
Very true. I think there's a carrier dedicated just to my family at this point.
All right, so yeah, I'm Nicholas, and I guess chiefly I'm a troublemaker, but my day job is leading a team at Packiyo, which is a warehouse management software company.
I love it. Awesome. So, Nicholas, we are going to talk all about last mile, but before we do that, I want to get into a little bit of getting to know you. So, in this season, I've been asking all of our guests 2 questions. Number 1, introduce us to Nicholas of high school years. What were you like as a teenager? Did you call it high school in England?
Yeah, we orphanage. No, I'm kidding.
Orphanage.
Oh my gosh, high school version of me.
What were you
the
like?
good thing is I was skinny, so there was that.
Good.
My hair was, I was closer to looking like Ed Sheeran, for better or worse.
Nice.
And
Ed was just trying to look like you.
No, definitely not. And definitely a nerd. So I was the one of those kids that was just nerding out. I'm very old, so back when I was a kid, we had just discovered the abacus. I joke, but it was like these old computers in a computer lab that I was spending a lot of time on. So yeah, skinny nerd. It was also a smart ass. I do remember that.
It's hard to imagine.
It's not
Hard to imagine that.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so question number 2: if you won the lottery, you're unimaginably wealthy from this moment forth. How does your life change or stay the same? What does your life look like?
Well, it definitely changes whether you want to or not. I unimaginable wealth. So that's like $280.
Yes.
Primary
282.
Yeah, $282. I think so. There would be the usual stuff. So it'd be like, yay, I would love a house with a backyard for the little puppy, and simple stuff like that. I think.
So would you move to the country, or are you just talking suburbia?
Like someplace, New York has like places that are just outside New York City, which are great. But if you wanted to get both and you're talking unimaginable wealth, then a place on Central Park. That would be,
you got it. You could buy the whole building.
Oh my gosh, imagine that. Which is why this will never happen, because that kind of money doesn't exist. But I think bigger picture, that would, I don't want to get too philosophical, but kind of would probably make me rethink what my priorities are and what my role is and how I can help others, right? In maybe different ways than I have done before.
I love that. I think there are some people who should get unimaginable wealth, so you can fit in that category.
Yay!
Okay, so that's awesome. Last mile, though. Let's talk last mile. What are kind of your key takeaways around this topic?
So first off, anything logistics it layers on an onion. So there are many different topics and many different areas to focus on. I'm glad you chose just last mile. I say just, but last mile has many different things as well. I think key takeaways for me, and you've also got to remember I obsess on the very first part of the journey to get to last mile. So for me, the key takeaways would be, and I see this across warehouses, is how our operations optimized. There we go for buzzwords, but basically,
Mm-hmm.
how is your team reacting? What is their response time, and what is your decisioning process around getting orders out the door? Right. So a lot of people put an emphasis on last mile delivery and ultimately the carrier, which is going to get to the last mile. But ultimately, there is that step of how that package gets to the carrier in the first place. And there can be a huge difference
Mm.
between, and you're receiving a lot of packages, right? So you're ordering a lot. Um, if I get an order in at my warehouse today and the delivery driver is coming in an hour, can I get that order processed and ready for that delivery driver in the hour so we can take it tonight? And if he can take it tonight, that's a day ahead than if I would have shipped it tomorrow. And that makes a massive difference in terms of shipping carrier options you choose and ultimately the cost of last mile, which that would be my takeaway.
I love that. So, what I'm hearing is that you're saying sometimes we focus so much on that last mile, but it's the 999 miles that it may have taken to get to that last mile that we overlook and really sets up that last mile for success.
Yeah, that's exactly right. How do you set up for the last mile?
I
That's
love that. That
I'm going to take
is
that tagline. I like that.
okay. I love it. Perfect. Sounds good. Okay, so let's back up a little bit and let's talk about last mile in general. Um, I guess how would you define last mile? What does the last mile process look like for those who aren't really as in the know, or what is your definition of last mile?
Yeah, what is my definition? This is where everybody can find out that I've got it wrong. So my definition of last mile is basically, all right, so there are all these steps of the journey of a package, right? There is how the things got into the box, then the box got a label put on it, then it got into a truck somehow that went to a distribution center, then the package gets routed to a local distribution center to where the recipient is, and then it gets put on some vehicle, a truck, and gets delivered. So that is the journey. But I think last mile, for me, what sticks out as last mile is there are many different companies and operations for all of the stuff until it gets to that last phase of how it gets delivered. And then typically your last mile is happening through the major carriers that we all recognize, like a USPS, UPS, DHL, FedEx. And every now and then you may have a courier. So last mile is really, there are all of these fancy operations that can occur, but then that last step of the process, it's typically a UPS or USPS delivery truck, unless you're Amazon, where you have your Amazon trucks that are now taking it that last mile and dropping off at the doorstep and putting it in the Dropbox.
And it's a very visible step. It seems that, for most consumers, all of that is all the complicated, crazy running through the warehouse, getting the labels,
Yeah, they're not
flying to,
really
and they don't know anything about it. It's just
right.
that last mile, really, where the consumers really kind of have an input and where is my package and what's going on.
Yeah, why is
Uh,
this FedEx truck pulling out in front of me on the road right now? Oh, he's got to get his packages to.
Exactly, exactly. So there are a lot of challenges with last mile. I hear
Yes.
things that like last mile is the most expensive step in the journey. Last mile is the step where we have a lot of sustainability concerns. Last mile is, just where a lot of challenges can run in. What kind of things are the challenges? What are the problems that we see in last mile?
I mean, I guess. Wow, you got some good questions, by the way. I'm having to actually think, which is annoying.
And it's not fun. It's not fun.
Gosh,
There's a time limit. You're
I'm
okay.
not going to need to drink more tea. I would say so again, it goes back to the beginning, right? So complications around last mile can be as simple as, do you have the right address?
Hmm.
Where is that order getting dropped off? Um, Timing. I always tend to, I know that I'm someone that's, I guess, in the world of logistics. It sounds like a movie trailer. But where I tend to use my brain in terms of trying to have empathy and understanding for the process is really as a consumer, because for as many packages that are shipped out using the software we're building, ultimately I'm still a consumer that's receiving packages, from silly things I've ordered off eBay or Amazon or whatever. So For me, the last mile comes down to what has happened at that first step to set up for it. And I think the complications around last mile is its convenience. So I live in an apartment building. Do I have tracking information? Do I know when that package is going to arrive or when it has arrived? And is it the right thing or things inside the package? Like that's where I tend to go. And I think from if I were to sort of put myself in the shoes of the logistics, like the delivery carrier, then last mile, like I can't imagine being a USPS driver or a UPS driver in New York City, like because it's so crazy. So like the complexity of being able to get that package into the right building to the right door, especially in cities. I think over the years we've heard about drones.
Yeah.
You won't have a drone going up to a door to a concierge in a building in New York and saying, "Excuse me, could you drop this off to 28B?"
Maybe they'll come to your window. Tap, tap, tap. That's your
Right?
drone.
Yeah, exactly. That's not creepy at all. So maybe Amazon is already on that, but that's where I tend to go with that.
Okay, so let's go back to step one then. How do you set up the process to make last mile easier? What are the key steps before we hit that last mile delivery that you feel like are the most important steps?
When you think about the people that are responsible for getting the packages to the carrier, right? So you've got products, you got your widgets on your shelves.
Mm-hmm.
Those orders are coming in. You got to get those widgets into the boxes and get those boxes to the carrier. Very rarely are you dealing with logistics educated PhDs running around a warehouse. It's just people running around a warehouse trying to follow process and procedure and trying to get stuff done and do it fast. So I think where it starts is what are your tools? What are the tools that people in your warehouse can use that can guide them? I'm a big believer in right time decisioning. How's that for?
Okay, yeah. Define.
Yeah, so define that. That's basically you don't want to keep making decisions on how an order should be packaged and fulfilled and shipped at the time that you're trying to process the order. It's a repetitive thing. There are factors that affect that. That should be automated.
So I'm hearing so you said a bunch of really cool things here and I want to key in. So this sounds like process. I heard you talk about process, tools, and people, which I think are you are right on the nose in terms of those being the elements that are critical. So let's talk process a little bit. First, right time decisioning is part of that process. So when is the right time to make those decisions?
Way before the order comes in. So basically what you want to do is you want to know you're going to know what your products are. You're going to know what shipping options are available to you. And basically you want to set up the decisions that are made and automated are going to be things like, okay, if an order comes in and the customer has specified expedited on their delivery option, assign this shipping method, put this in the queue here, it's a priority order. Versus, a customer came in, they used this coupon code, include this SKU, which could be an insert, and use this shipping option and use this package. And you can basically set that up. Any warehouse management system worth its salt, you're going to be able to set those rules up. So basically, as the orders are coming in, those conditions are going to be met. And what your team is focused on is, I've got to go and pick things. I got to bring it back to the pack station. I've got to pack them and put them in boxes. And the label automatically comes out. I don't need to make a decision on, is it USPS? Is it UP? I don't need to think about any of that. I just need to make sure I'm scanning the right items and the system is going to tell me if I got it right or wrong and get it packaged, get the label on it, and next, and just keep repeating that, right? And
Yeah, so having the right tools then, the right technology is really so I'm thinking of a business. So let's say that I am trying to run through all the scenarios and get my right time decision making in. I'm trying to do it in advance. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of different scenarios.
Yeah.
This coupon at this site with this package. So is it solely through technology? Is that the way that I'm going to make sure that I've made all those decisions ahead of time? Is it in a WMS? Are there other tools that I need to look at as well?
It depends, right? Again, logistics. We could go on about this for years with all the.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing to think about is how. So a lot of the customer experience on the purchase side is happening through marketing, right? So it's a function
Yep.
of marketing.
Yep.
So what are the tools that are available, or at least what tools do you have available that connects your marketing and sales function with your warehouse operations function?
Okay.
Because ultimately, a lot of that automation is really optimizing a customer experience that should be experienced, that is going to be experienced when that customer receives that box and now they've physically got the product that they ordered from your brand. So I
Mm.
think, the first part is, what are you making available to marketing? At what speed, for example, could they spin up a new campaign,
Mm-hmm.
add a coupon code, add this code at checkout, get this free gift? Or we've decided that if you spend over $100, you get a free item, or whatever it is, for them to be able to come up with those campaigns and promotions and the speed in which that can get implemented in a warehouse. Legacy would tell us that that stuff takes months of planning, sort of old
Right.
school. Whereas now the expectation, especially with e-commerce brands that are emerging and the sort of the more recent DTC e-com brands, they want to be able to make that decision and within, I don't know, hours, have that implemented on the logistics side and then be able to support that customer experience, right? So, yeah, I
Yeah,
don't.
I love that. I work in marketing, so
Nice. So, yeah, there you go.
I
Yeah.
totally get that sometimes we get a brilliant idea and it wasn't 3 months in advance. So
Right. Yeah.
implementing that, I mean, that is critical, that technology piece. And what I'm hearing as well then is that your systems have to work well together.
Yeah,
So
they need to be
the
usable.
tools. Yes.
So
So
yeah,
how do
the
you
way in
ensure
which the
that?
systems, so how the systems integrate, right? Always look at that. What are you on? Are you on Shopify? Well, any system that you should be using should at least hook into Shopify, right? Which I hope any
Yes.
system would. Are you hooked into the shipping carriers? What you don't want to do is you don't want to you don't want marketing to come at you and say, we've got this fantastic idea. It's going to require you to go over here, log in with that account, do this thing, then take that data, import it into this tool, then do these three things. Like, it's going to go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to be able to support is all the systems communicate that are involved in the process. Typically,
Okay.
that sales channel, your actual inventory management, warehouse management system, and then your shipping carriers. All of those are connected with your WMS at sort of the center of that. And then, when we're talking about that idea from marketing and you have an automation, it's one thing to have the idea and say, let's implement it. If you've got the right system, it shouldn't actually have any impact whatsoever on the day-to-day life of someone working in a warehouse. And this is where we come back to that right time decisioning. The
Mm.
decisions have been made, so there's no having to figure it out. We got a new campaign, great. To me, it doesn't make any difference. I'm going to pick these things that I'm being told to pick and bring them back to the pack station, and someone is just following the instructions to pack them and get them out. So I think everything around this critical stage and how that order gets processed out the door ultimately is going to affect both the customer experience and the time and convenience of that last mile delivery.
Okay, so let's say that I am an e-commerce owner and not a very smart one, obviously.
Well, no, let's say
I've
you're
got
smart. No, let's go with
okay, we'll say
it.
I'm a smart one,
There
and
we go.
yet uneducated in the logistics
Right.
field. We'll say that.
Figuring a lot of stuff out.
Exactly. So I've got my WMS. If I come up with an amazing deal and it blows up, I've gone viral, people are going crazy. Do I need to have a WMS? I mean, are there things I should be looking for in a WMS that can scale up and down? How do I balance the money I'm putting into my WMS with kind of the balance I may need to have to make sure it is flexible enough to respond quickly.
Well, I mean, you're hitting it right on. You said you were not that smart with logistics. I think you know it all.
Okay.
I think that's why you would choose a WMS in the first place, right?
Okay.
So you're obviously scaling, because if it comes to, and I see this a lot. I've been seeing a lot of this for years, but we'll have someone that comes to us and they'll talk about, their growing pains and the reason why they reached out. And it's like, well, what are you using now? They're like, a ship station, right? So they're using something that's printing the shipping labels. But really where they're struggling is once you start to scale, now you're running into the issues of, well, what's the state of my inventory? And that's critical, because if you are seeing sales growth, then you want to have a really good understanding of inventory to be able to replenish it. So
yeah, right.
So everything has a ripple effect, and I think that, or cascading effect. I think the point of a WMS is, how can you eliminate the thinking and sort of these manual processes that sort of is stuck in someone's head in the warehouse. I mean, I've seen warehouses where it's a person that knows where the inventory is to go get it. Like, oh, we got an order in for widget A. And this person is the inventory management system. They know where it's at. And that's a huge problem.
That's a huge risk.
Yeah, it's a huge risk. So I think, and there are many different scales of company, but I think for your small to medium enterprise looking to simplify their operations on the day-to-day warehouse-wise, your WMS should at least come with the basics of good inventory tracking, because everything that's happening in the warehouse impacts inventory, whether it's coming in or it's going out. And then what is your order management system, and what does that afford you as far as getting rid of the decisioning that's happening on the fly and sort of preloading all those rules so your team just follows like easy to follow, repeatable processes.
Okay, so I'm gonna put you on the spot here. We're gonna pretend that you are now the business owner of a variety of sizes of business, and I want you to share with me what your tech stack would look like. What are the tools that you feel like would be critical at different stages to have? Okay, so let's say that you're just starting out. You got this, Nicholas. You're just starting out. We'll even say you've moved out of your mom's basement, and you're doing.
Love to do that.
You're doing fairly well, but you're kind of at that starter stage. Are you okay with spreadsheets? What is the tech you feel like you need very early on?
Early on, and I owned an e-commerce brand, and it was like an experiment because I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
It's all about putting yourself in the other shoes. So I had this e-commerce business, and it was low order volume. Like I'm doing 5-10 orders a day, right?
Perfect.
And I've got my main business. So this is a side hustle.
Yeah, I got your side hustle. That's great. Lots of side hustle people.
Hustle, yeah. So I had Shopify, Etsy.
Okay.
And as far as shipping, I was just printing out the labels manually.
Okay.
Were
you directly connected to like carriers?
I was doing it through Shopify, but it was only 10, and I wasn't optimizing for best rate. I was just trying to get the orders out the door. That was what it was about. And then I would be off at the post office at night. I think if I had the time, I unfortunately didn't. You have to put time into these things to grow them. But if we were to sort of fast forward the scale of that, so say if it now was 100 orders a day.
Okay.
So Shopify is great, Etsy is great, but they need to now feed into some form of order queue. I don't want to be logging into them individually and printing out labels manually. So some form of warehouse management system. I wonder which one. And then I would want that to be integrated with, a no-brainer Easy Post, obviously, because then I can optimize around my shipping labels. So that's the day-to-day. But then I need to probably get some better insight as to what I need to order from suppliers. So I would look at inventory planner,
Okay.
and there are some other tools out there. I mean, my world is my world in which I obsess on. But if I were to do this, I would use. There's a tool called Lumi AI, and
Okay.
we just integrated with them. I'm not a huge AI this, AI that. I've just used it for generating awkward images mainly. But the
Nice, nice.
um,
With people with lots of extra fingers or
yeah,
missing
exactly. It's
fingers.
like, where
Hmm.
did that arm come from? Okay. But what's been kind of fascinating with Lumi is as much as I obsess on product and sort of how we build this for our clients, I consider our clients to be way smarter than me when it comes to they're dealing with, thousands of orders a day. So they're looking for insight. They're looking for those answers on what do we need to order? What is stale? How is my team performing? And I think, we're seeing this with Lumi AI, how it's exposing
Hmm.
those kinds of answers. And I think that's something that's going to continue to evolve. I know that I'm getting sort of a bit ahead of
No, no,
myself.
I actually is bringing up a question for me. So we're going off track, but we're going to come back. We'll circle back. We got
Great.
our lingo in here. Um, so data.
Yeah.
I go to conferences, I talk to people every day, and data is so critical in our industry. But I'm also hearing a little bit about data fatigue, data overload, kind of the idea of like there's so much data we have with all our technology. What elements of data do you feel like are the most important for shippers to be paying attention to for, e-commerce people? What data elements should they be looking at to make sure they're making things as smooth as possible to get to that last mile as well and quickly and as optimally as they
Good
can?
question. I mean, it's a good question. And I think it's going to come down to, so this is the problem with data.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it depends on your ability to translate, right?
Yep.
To be able
Yep.
to figure out what's going on with it. And I think, you hear of people that are amazing with data and they have
Mm-hmm.
data scientists. There are actual scientists out there that's
Mm-hmm.
what they do. So I think the first thing I would look at is I would want to pair what I'm going to try and get out of the data based on what resources and skills that I have at my disposal, first off, right? I'm not going to try and take on a
Mm.
6 month data analysis project if it's just me and an ops guy in a warehouse. I
Okay, so
think,
let's say we got you and your ops guy, and you've
yeah,
got a WMS. Well,
right. And
what
we've
is the
got some
data in
data.
your WMS you're looking at?
Right. So I would look at, when it comes to last mile delivery, I think the first thing I would look at is how long does it take us to get an order out the door? So that is
Okay.
order comes in from Shopify, say, right, from sales
Mm-hmm.
channel, is in the system. Did it take us a day, 6 hours, 2 days? Then next thing I would look at is what is the error rate of those orders I'm getting out the door? Are we
Mm.
90%, 99%? And when I mean error rate, did we put the right items in the box? Did we did we use the right box? Simple stuff like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
What
yeah.
is our accuracy? The next bit of data I would look
And
at,
Nicholas, is that in the WMS? Can you find that data? That
yeah,
like where do you
yeah,
get that will be in there? Okay.
yeah. You can find it in a couple of ways. There's like shipments reports. I mean, you can find it in most e-commerce platforms as well.
Okay.
Shipment reports, picker packer reports, right? You can see
Okay.
insight into your team. The next
Perfect.
bit of data that I would look at is, and Easy Post actually makes this available for
Mm-hmm.
you as well. So you don't need to just use a WMS. How are your carriers performing on their SLAs?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, yay, we're using this carrier and they're saying 2 to 3 days. Well, why is it that 15% of our orders are being delivered 3 to 5 days, right?
Yes.
So that
That
would be the,
is one cool place that AI and stuff I do love. I'm with
yeah,
you. AI is on the cusp. It's got a lot of potential. It's not quite there yet, at least for
yeah,
us in the logistics. There are little pieces though. And that's one I love is being able to look at it and say 95% of the time it's taking this long. And so
right.
it's still
Or,
that
yeah,
error, but you can look at it and be like, okay, you're saying 1 to 2 days and it's taken 3 to 4, 95%
exactly.
of the
And I,
time. So
so,
yeah.
we're sort of keeping on that AI theme for a second. I think when we think about AI overall and what we hear in the media, it's kind of like it's going to take over the world and we'll all
Mm-hmm.
be subservient. Well, what I think about in terms of logistics is I can ask something that's looked at a large data set, some basic questions, and it's going to help me get to the answer, right?
Yes.
And yeah, it's not doing
Yeah.
anything other than that. Maybe we'll get to a point where, and we're looking at this at Packiyo, but this is not something we're going to be implementing this year. But how do you get to a point where AI can be more active in the decisioning
Yes.
around trends and things that it's seeing in the
Mm-hmm.
warehouse and how the warehouse team sort of optimizes ops? I think we got a
Yes.
while to go there.
Yes.
Uh,
I love AI in
but
terms of simplifying the
yeah,
complex because I feel like that's where we've got a lot of potential. So we don't need to, we talked about data overload and data fatigue. Hopefully that'll remove some of that as we get into,
but that's where
it being reliable enough.
I mean, you're hitting it right on the head, and that's where I come from, and that is how do you simplify, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get down to, like, when it comes to those metrics, you can go crazy with metrics,
Yeah.
but start somewhere simple and you can build out from there, right? So, okay, well,
Perfect.
our metric on how long it takes to process an order right now, it looks like on average it takes us 2 days. All right, well, why does it take 2 days? And maybe there's some metrics around there you could start adding in.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I
And
like
make
that.
small goals to improve and look into that data. I absolutely love that.
I
So
should do that with my diet, small goals.
don't look too closely, Nicholas. That's what I say. Don't look at those numbers too closely.
Nice.
Okay, so let's say so I think we covered that really well. We've got the technology. If you're a larger corporation or you're really scaling, you've been expanding, you're needing new warehouses. Technology wise, do you feel like there are additional things that people should be adding to their tech stack at that point?
Well, I think at that point, you're starting to get into, I guess, from a data perspective, you want to start separating that data out
Mm-hmm.
into, I mean, depending on the size of the org, but probably into a separate pool for machine learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not having your machine learning happening directly in your WMS, because I think your data set's going to be larger. I also think once you start getting into multi-warehouse,
Mm-hmm.
you now have decisioning that's not happening just within the boundaries of a building. It's now happening across a network of
Yeah.
nodes. So now the decisioning gets a bit more complex, right? How are
Yes.
you optimizing where things go to in that network
Mm-hmm.
for final mile delivery, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we start to get into some fascinating, that is a fascinating topic.
Yeah, when we get to that stage, it's really interesting because that's where every single package and every second and every inch of size and all of those different things really starts to balloon up into huge dollars and huge amounts of time. So
Right.
so as we're then going and we're hitting that last mile stage, what are there anything else that we could have done before to make it more smooth or that would have prevented that last mile from really taking off?
I mean, it's funny because we get into all of this, we're talking about AI and we're talking about like
Mm-hmm.
networks but it really, I mean, it really is like simple stuff. So we talked about how we're going to optimize the orders when they're coming into the system and how they get treated. Are you doing analysis on cartonization, right? So how
Mm-hmm.
much air is in the box,
Mm-hmm.
which can have an impact well, obviously can have an impact in terms of your DIM and the cost of delivery,
Mm-hmm.
but it can also have an impact of if I now have to put an item in a box and also grab some paper or some air bubbles and put that in, I've added in another step, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's elimination of steps required to fulfill. And then I think simple stuff, address validation. Is it a residential
Mm-hmm.
or is it a commercial address? Is this a valid address? Stop it before the packer gets to a problem. They're like, well, I've packed it, but I can't generate the shipping label.
Mm-hmm.
I think we as consumers, sounds terrible, but when we're shopping, when we're expecting delivery, sure, same day, 2 day delivery is awesome. In some cases, you may be ordering same day because you're going on the road in a couple of days.
Right.
So, all of that's very convenient. However, I think the number one area of convenience is information on what the status of the order is. So
Mm-hmm.
in your WMS, in your sales channel, your customer gets updates that, hey, your order has been shipped. Your tracking number is pending. Here's your tracking number. Oh, the carrier has picked up. I scanned the tracking number. It's now en route. It's in the final delivery mile. It's out for delivery today. I think all of that stuff, while nothing that's mind-blowing in terms of tech, it is amazing how many e-commerce brand warehouses and 3PL warehouses that we come across before they have a good WMS in place that really struggle with that stuff because they don't have the tool at the center of it to keep it all sort of streamlined.
I feel like we've really talked a lot today about simplifying and taking what is an extremely complex process and drilling it down so it's really simple. I do have a question for you. So you mentioned, are you, when we're talking about cartonization and whatnot and having extra space in the box, is there anything you recommend to somebody? Let's say they're listening right now and they're wanting to figure out maybe where they're having some waste, where some time is getting wasted, where some processes are slower than they need to be. Is there something specific they can do? Would you recommend they walk through the warehouse? Would you, as you said, you went and ran an e-com business yourself, and there's so much you learn from kind of doing hands-on. Would you recommend that they get boots on the ground? Are you recommending they look more into their data, that they get a consultant to help them? What are the best ways for somebody to identify where they may have waste?
I mean, possibly all of what you just mentioned. I think if I were to approach it, I would approach it with boots on the ground, my boots on the ground.
Yeah.
It depends on the problem that you're trying to solve. So if it's an operational problem, spending time with the operations team, understanding, what's happening, I think is good, right? Gives you context. Then maybe being able to use as a benchmark or a comparison. There are plenty of companies out there that we have people reach out to us and say, hey, we're struggling in terms of operations. Is there a place where we can go visit a warehouse, right? So you can go visit warehouses. There are people that love to show you their operations so you can
go visit peers, get advice from them. I would guess also talk to your not just your boots on the ground, but obviously you've got people in the warehouse. You mentioned people as part of that.
Yeah. I mean, you could do undercover boss. I'm kidding.
You could. I know.
I
find out all sorts of things.
So for me, what has been a consistent, really consistent way of getting a pulse on what's happening is to put myself in the shoes of customer support. We call it client success. It was something that I saw at, I had a couple of friends in the early days of Slack. And Slack, the messaging app, and Slack, what they were doing is they were rotating everybody in the company to spend at least, I think it was like a day or something like that, on customer support every several months. Right. So cool. Give everybody exposure to, what are customers asking? What are they struggling with? What are the tech support things that they need to do? So it helped them improve product, how they communicated. It sort of kept everybody grounded and gave everybody empathy for the problem. So I think that's very important when it comes to, for me, how I work with my team. I spend time in client success. I think anybody that's, running a warehouse, what is going on your customer support side, right? They're the ones that they're really at the front of the brand. So they're really getting information back from your clients, so from your customers. And in most cases, a customer is going to be reaching out to customer support because they have a problem. So what are the problems? I think I would start there. Yes. The benchmarking, as we mentioned earlier. And then, I'm not a huge fan of going to all the conventions in the world because I actually do like to work for a living. But I think going to, in logistics, there's a couple of really good shows. There's a load out there, but the ones I know that have been really good for me, Manifest, Shop Talk have been great. So I think it's also good there to, try and meet with your peers, get some of those keynotes in, even get pitched by a couple of these companies out there and see what they're seeing and see what they're saying and see what they're trying to solve. I think all of that is helpful.
Yeah, I say I have found that something I do love about those shows. And I know you said there's a lot of them, and we all need to work and we need to get our stuff busy. But
Right.
sometimes it does help us step back for a second, though, and kind of
Yeah,
think
it
bigger
gets you out of the
picture.
bubble.
It does. It gets you out of that daily grind of I'm fixing all these problems and putting out fires and start thinking, whew, I need to think proactively and what kind of changes do I need to make? And
Yeah.
so I love that.
There's something else, Laurie, and
Uh-huh.
that is forums.
Mm.
So you have like Reddit and Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn. There are lots of groups. Um, there are these communities out there. There's like Fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's like logistics groups on Facebook.
There are.
And
Yes.
you have like very passionate people in these groups that are willing to give you, especially if you're now in the stage where you're looking at another solution or
Mm-hmm.
implementing other tools, have other people used it and what has been their experience? So
Yeah.
you can find out like, all right, what is the real impact that this is having and sort of what is the fit for it, right? In terms of maybe something you're evaluating. I think that's a
I
good thought.
love that advice. You are the first person in my podcast to ever advise going into these social media groups, and I
Ah,
love
okay.
that. We're just friends, Nicholas, because I join all of those. So one of the
Nice.
first things I always do, because you do start to see trends and you start to get
Yeah.
whispers of what's going on and opportunities, and so it is a way that without you necessarily thinking, I mean, there's some great opportunities out there. So thank you so much. We're out of time, but I just
Woohoo.
wanted to hear from you if you had any final pieces of advice. I'm going to sum up a couple of the things I heard today. And when we are focusing on getting to that last mile, the most critical elements really are what happens before. And in that, you need to be looking at your people, your processes, your technology. You need to be looking for ways to simplify. Take all of that crazy tech and see how you can simplify it down and reduce waste, become more efficient. You can do that with your boots on the ground. You can do that by talking to your people. You can do that by visiting warehouses. You can do that by going online, social media. There's lots of ways for you to look at and find little mishaps, including looking in your technology, as we mentioned, what were your error rates, things like that. Keep an eye on that. And take advantage of data, but don't let it overwhelm you. Did I miss anything, Nicholas?
No, in fact, you said it in the right order as well. So I think you're
Oh,
showing off. Anybody would think you live and breathe this stuff, Laurie, but
I know. You'd think it's
people,
my life.
process, tech, right? So a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people approach tech first. Um, I'm a recovering software engineer of many, many years. So I would
My
say
husband's still an addict, so I know.
that's great.
He's a software engineer.
I would always lean on people first, right? So your technology is only as good as how you use it. So what is your capacity to use it? And it could be that there are certain technology solutions that are great, but are you at the right stage
Yeah,
to use them, right? So
yeah.
there's even thinking about that. But yeah, for me, it really is, it's the humans that are powering your warehouse. Sure,
Mm-hmm.
there are robots out there, but the majority of warehouses that we deal with, it's people making a living, trying to do a good job. So, what are the ways in which you're setting them up for success? And if you really want a good gauge as to what's going on as a business owner, spend some time with your customer success
Yeah.
team and see what they're living. And I think you'll get some good feedback.
Thank you so much. That is awesome. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We love you. We love having you here as part of this community. And I am so excited that we will be able to see you next time. Nicholas, any final goodbye?
Drink more tea.
Drink more tea, says our British guest. So have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.